Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to follow up a part of the session taking place in Johannesburg of the in South Africa of the G20, where Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouly is attending with an Egyptian delegation on the behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Reform and partnership. This is not a call for charity, it is a call for a new global compact that positions Africa as a pillar of a more balanced, prosperous, and resilient international order. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Joel Nachitenge. That was exactly less than 3 minutes. We'd like to thank you for that. The next report is on inequality, and I'd like to ask Professor Jayati Ghosh and Ms. Winnie Byanyima to present the report. And they also have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa, also for the honor of presenting at all to the G20 meeting. We will try and take 4 minutes, if you allow us, 2 for me and 2 for Winnie Byanyima, because we have some important points to make, very, very briefly, if you will forgive us. It is a great honor and privilege. We just want to identify some of the major trends that we found while consulting extensively for this report. And we really would like to emphasize also a proposal that we have, which we believe is ultimately very achievable. First, global inequality remains very high. It did come down slightly since 2000 because of China, but it remains very high, and recent years have seen an increase. But mostly, the problem is the concentration of wealth and income at the top, and the excessive power that that generates to influence regulations, to influence institutions, and to impact on what governments do. We found also that there is a very significant shift in terms of public and private wealth. Private wealth has accelerated dramatically, often because of a transfer of net assets from public to private hands, which in turn has reduced the fiscal space of governments. We found also that, contrary to what was a common belief, inequality hampers growth. It actually inhibits better performance, and therefore G20 leaders from across the political spectrum, if you want to see broad-based progress that benefits citizens, then you must take steps to address inequality. We also found that inequality undermines political stability and democracy, as has already been mentioned, and leads to very adverse social and environmental impacts, particularly through its multidimensional effects. I now pass on to Winnie Byanyima.
Thank you, Jayati. Thank you, Excellency the President. I too thank you for commissioning us and for putting this issue of inequality at the very heart of the international agenda. It's historic. Jayati has set out the drivers of inequality. Our report considers different practical, pragmatic, and very possible ways to respond to these drivers of inequality, much of it based on what governments are doing or have done. Your Excellencies, whether it is about reining in corporate concentration and monopolistic behavior, whether it is about reforming intellectual property regimes while fostering innovation, whether it's about governments providing needed fiscal space for developing countries, all these are achievable through international cooperation. So our report looks at ways to achieve this through national or international means. Our main recommendation, the primary recommendation of this report is the creation of an international panel on inequality. We find that there is a lot of information out there. Knowledge has been collected, many data sets. However, we find the more we know, the less we know. And the more we know, the more we understand the need to have a platform where there is reliable, comprehensive knowledge for all to use. We envisage a globally balanced international body that would provide a technical service to synthesize and provide authoritative and independent assessments and analysis of inequality. It will be available to everyone, policymakers, private sector, civil society, trade unions, and the media. Our recommendation is inspired by the tremendous work of the IPCC, which has helped governments to address climate change, or also the approach of the new scientific panel on artificial intelligence. We do not envisage some big global institution, but a lean body bringing together a network of research institutions and individual scholars and experts. It should have authority and carefully guarded independence. Most of the work will largely be done by researchers contributing their time voluntarily. So far, we see that 700 economists and other experts across 70 countries, including Nobel laureates, have asked you, Your Excellencies, to support this initiative and have offered to contribute to its work. Over 30 former presidents and prime ministers have also endorsed the proposal. We're pleased to see governments supporting this new body. We are hopeful that many more governments will support it as a practical way to help your own policymakers to address inequality. It would be a game changer at the crossroads of academia, policy, and practice. Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for entrusting us with this important task. We hope that the distinguished leaders of the G20 sitting here in South Africa, the country that has experienced inequality like no other, will decide to take forward this vital new initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my two sisters, for presenting this report, and indeed thank you to Mr. Joel Netshitenge. These are the two reports that we spoke about when we started, and we thought that they should be deposited here, much as they have not really been formally discussed during the whole process of the G20. They are deposited here so that we may all internalize them, discuss them. There are reports that can be taken forward in a number of other forums. And we hope that, having been introduced here, the G20, we will be able to interface with them in our various other organizations and as governments and organizations, and see the best way of taking them forward. I do know, for instance, the suggestion has been made that the African Union, for instance, should take forward these reports, and I'm sure other organizations will do so as well. So thank you very much. These reports are important, and we thank you for presenting them. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I now take you to the second session, A Resilient World, the G20's Contribution, Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change, Just Energy Transitions, and Food Systems. I will now allow inputs or interventions, and we had hoped that those who wish to make interventions on this topic should be able to do so, and those who feel that they would like to make interventions in the third session can forego whatever intervention they wish to make. I do have a list. We are working against time because the morning was rather important in terms of having the declaration adopted, but allowing those who were making interventions a little bit more time as they wanted to express themselves. Now, we want to limit inputs to strictly the minutes that are set out, 4 minutes each, and thereafter we will go to 3 minutes each for invited countries. I will make my intervention later, and I would now like to ask President Lula da Silva, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, to make his intervention in this regard.
Eu quero, mais uma vez, reiterar meus cumprimentos ao presidente Ramaphosa, cumprimentar a presidenta da Namíbia, a senhora Netumbo, e também cumprimentar o Antônio Guterres, secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, por meio de quem eu cumprimento todas as entidades internacionais aqui presentes. Esta oportuna sessão ocorre no mesmo tempo em que estamos por 2 palavras para concluirmos as negociações da COP30 no Brasil. No ano em que o planeta ultrapassou pela primeira vez, e talvez de forma permanente, o limite de 1,5 graus acima dos níveis pré-industriais, a comunidade internacional tinha diante de si uma escolha: continuar ou desistir. Optamos pela primeira alternativa. Na COP da verdade, a ciência prevaleceu. O multilateralismo venceu. Reafirmamos nosso compromisso com o Acordo de Paris. Saímos de Belém com um quadro renovado de contribuições nacionalmente determinadas. Mobilizamos a sociedade civil, a academia, o setor privado, os povos indígenas e os movimentos sociais, para fazer da COP30 a COP com a 2ª maior participação da história. Entramos agora numa nova etapa que exigirá esforço simultâneo em 2 frentes. Acelerar as ações do enfrentamento da mudança do clima e nos preparar para uma nova realidade climática. O G20 cumpre papel central em ambas. O grupo responde por 77% das emissões globais. É do G20 que um novo modelo de economia deve emergir. O grupo é um ator-chave na elaboração de um mapa do caminho para afastar o mundo dos combustíveis fósseis. A COP30 mostrou que o mundo precisa enfrentar esse debate. A semente dessa proposta foi plantada e irá frutificar, mais cedo ou mais tarde. A mudança do clima não é uma simples questão de política ambiental. É, sobretudo, um desafio de planejamento econômico. As prioridades estão invertidas. É inconcebível que não sejamos capazes de mobilizar US$ 1,3 trilhão em financiamento climático, enquanto o dobro desse montante é consumido por despesas militares. Fortalecer a capacidade de prevenção e resposta a desastres é uma questão de vida ou morte. Sistemas de alerta precoce não bastam. O sistema vai colocar à prova nossas pontes, rodovias, edifícios e linha de transmissão. Vai exigir forma mais eficiente de gerir a água, cultivar alimentos e produzir energia. Vai obrigar milhares de pessoas e de negócios a buscarem áreas mais seguras para viver e empreender. Os princípios voluntários para investir em redução de risco e de desastres, aprovados sob a liderança sul-africana do G20, enfatizam a necessidade de financiamento de longo prazo. Construir resiliência não é gasto, é investimento. Para cada dólar investido em adaptação, ganha-se 4 dólares em prejuízos evitados e outros benefícios sociais e econômicos. Mas um mundo resiliente não se faz apenas com infraestrutura. Quando alguém é atingido por um evento extremo, são as políticas públicas do Estado que ajudam a se reerguer. Contudo, cerca da metade da população mundial não conta com proteção social. Quase 700 milhões de pessoas ainda sofrem com a fome. Vai contra nosso sentido mais elementar de justiça permitir que as maiores vítimas da crise climática sejam aquelas que menos contribuíram para causá-la. O Brasil lançou na COP30 a Declaração de Belém sobre fome, pobreza e ação climática, centrada nas pessoas. Nela, reforçamos 3 compromissos: fortalecer a proteção social, apoiar pequenos produtores e garantir alternativas de vida sustentáveis para comunidades que vivem nas florestas. O G20 pode proteger cadeias alimentares por meio de medidas como compras públicas e seguros rurais. Também pode remunerar quem preserva as florestas por meio do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para Sempre, lançado na COP30. Só haverá transição justa se o G20 liderar o caminho. Como nos ensinou Nelson Mandela, tudo parece impossível até que seja feito. A hora de fazer é agora. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, President Lula. I'd now like to ask His Excellency President João Manuel Lorenzo, the President of the Republic of Angola and the Chairperson of the African Union, to take
other technologies, for wind, for geothermal, for hydropower, for new low-emission fuels, and of course for the investments in grids, storage, and other infrastructure that tie the energy system together. So this can be the growth story of the 21st century. And therefore I would like to assure you of 2 things. First, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to lead by example. We are firmly on track to meet our own 2030 target. We have an ambitious NDC for 2035, and we have the goal to be climate neutral by 2050, so Europe is staying the course. Second, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to partner with developing economies, to mobilize investments in clean energy around the world. And here let me give you 4 figures that are telling. Of the 2 trillion invested globally in clean energy last year, only 2% was in Africa, while Africa has 600 million people who have no access to electricity, and it is the continent with 60% of the world's best solar potential. So this cannot be. We must change this imbalance. And that is at the core of Europe's Global Gateway Initiative. These are 150 billion euros investment program for Africa, of which 25% goes into grids and into interconnectors. And that is also why, together with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, my friend, we launched the campaign called Scaling Up Renewables for Africa. Yesterday we had a big pledging event. We are working with governments and the private sector, and thank you to many, many of you around the table who contributed to the pledging event. We reached 15.5 billion euros pledges for investment in renewables in Africa. A big success, and many thanks again for that. Thank you.
Thank you for passing on that message, Ursula. I now would like to call upon His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
So it's only me, Mr. President. I'm the finance minister. I'm going to give the introduction in the name of President Macron, who just is at a meeting now. Thank you. Je remercie l'Afrique du Sud d'avoir mis à l'agenda la question de la résilience de ce monde que nous avons en commun. Nous avons ce matin parlé de nos économies, mais nous ne devons pas oublier nos biens communs. Les défis et les dangers qui menacent notre planète ne peuvent être traités que collectivement, ensemble. Les effets du changement climatique, la dégradation de l'environnement, les pollutions, la perte de biodiversité, la multiplication des catastrophes climatiques et l'impact de ces facteurs sur les systèmes alimentaires sont interconnectés avec des conséquences claires sur nos économies et nos sociétés quand le développement et la croissance sont des facteurs de paix. Nous avons tous à perdre à choisir l'affrontement ou le repli sur soi plutôt que la coopération. Refuser de s'attaquer au changement climatique, de bâtir un monde capable de résister aux catastrophes naturelles, de travailler à des systèmes alimentaires performants ou de coopérer en matière de santé, c'est nous fragiliser collectivement. Je me félicite donc